bitter fight between Ben and Jerry's and Unilever. Hi everyone, I'm Jeff, and this is Plain English lesson number 502. JR is the producer. You met him last week. He has uploaded all the content for this full lesson to plainenglish.com/502. The full content, remember, includes a free transcript, a how-to video, practice exercises, and more, all at plainenglish.com/502. Last week, you heard about the, let's call it, unique arrangement that Ben & Jerry's has with its parent company. If you haven't heard that lesson, you can find it at plainenglish.com/501. But here is a reminder. In the year 2000, Ben & Jerry's sold itself to Unilever, the food giant. As a condition of the sale, Unilever was required to let Ben & Jerry's keep its own board of directors. And that board of directors would control the brand's social mission. For over 20 years, this arrangement seemed to work for both sides. Ben & Jerry's continued to be the socially conscious company. Unilever got the benefit of owning a premium ice cream brand. But all that fell apart this year, and that is what today's lesson is all about. In the second half, we'll talk about the expression take exception to, and we have a quote of the week. Let's get going. Ben & Jerry's ice cream is sold in about 35 countries. You can find it in all of North America, Brazil, most of Europe, and parts of Asia and the Caribbean. You can find it in Israel, where there's a Ben & Jerry's factory, and you could even get the company's unique flavors in the Palestinian territory. The Palestinian territory. These are three disputed areas: the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. Israel took control of this land in the Six-Day War in 1967, and Israel has controlled it ever since. The United Nations considers this an illegal occupation, a violation of international law. Israel disagrees. Ben & Jerry's makes ice cream. As an ice cream maker, it had not taken a political stance on whether Israel's occupation was legal or not. Most companies don't take political stands on something so divisive. But Ben & Jerry's also has a history of social activism. And on July 19th, 2021, Ben & Jerry's issued a press release saying that it would stop selling its ice cream in the occupied Palestinian territory. The company said that selling its products there was not consistent with its values. In an FAQ in the press release, the company said it has a history of advocating for human rights and economic and social justice. The company said that it didn't want its own products to be sold in an illegal occupation. The company then found itself in the middle of a controversy. Israel and its supporters, not surprisingly, took exception to the press release. The owner of the Israel factory that makes Ben & Jerry's ice cream for sale in the region, that owner strongly disagreed with the move. Yair Lapid, Israel's foreign minister, called it a disgraceful surrender to anti-Semitism. Several U.S. states also disagreed with the move, and they decided to act on their disagreement by pulling state investment money from the parent company, Unilever. All right, the parent company. The parent company agreed in 2000 to let Ben & Jerry's make decisions like this. But now, Unilever was feeling the heat. Now, the Ben & Jerry's decision about its ice cream in the West Bank was impacting Unilever's business. And Unilever is one of the biggest consumer products companies in the world. Unilever wanted to lower the temperature of the debate. Big companies don't like to be under fire for politics. They can't win by playing that game. So they went looking for a workaround. And here's what they decided. The ice cream in the Middle East was manufactured by a contract manufacturer. So Unilever decided to sell its Ben & Jerry's business in Israel to that company. And the buyer then would license the Ben & Jerry's recipes from Unilever, paying Unilever for the privilege. And they, the buyers, they would be the ones to make and sell the ice cream in the Palestinian territories. It sounded like an elegant solution. Ben & Jerry's could legitimately say that neither it nor Unilever was selling ice cream in the Palestinian territories, but they would still make money from licensing the recipes to a local manufacturer. Local customers could still get their favorite flavors. The package would be printed in Hebrew and Arabic, and it would not have the American trademarks. Unilever went ahead with the sale in June and told the Ben & Jerry's people about it later. This is the sort of perfect compromise that works in the boardroom of big companies. But it didn't work for the people who truly cared about the issues. The Ben & Jerry's board of directors thought this was a sellout, and they didn't appreciate the fact that they weren't consulted before Unilever sold the Israel business. So the Ben & Jerry's board of directors sued Unilever, saying the Ben & Jerry's brand would suffer irreparable damage as a result of the decision. Unilever said the deal was done and couldn't be canceled. If that sounds strange, it is. In short, a part of Unilever sued Unilever itself. A judge recently rejected the Ben & Jerry's attempt to stop the sale, saying that there would not be irreparable harm to the brand. So for now, Unilever won the case against its own subsidiary. Unilever won in court And Unilever got what it wanted in the Palestinian territories. But think about who they won against. They defeated their own subsidiary. So now Unilever has a disgruntled brand in its portfolio. Some press reports say that relations between Ben and Jerry's and parent Unilever have broken down. And it's calling into question the viability of a brand maintaining control over social and political missions. Big companies can typically get away with taking a stand on social issues like higher wages, protecting the environment, things like that. But when they wade into international politics, the stakes are so much higher. I don't have too much sympathy for Ben and Jerry's in this case, though. I know that Unilever said Ben and Jerry's could continue to make all the decisions about its social mission, but that's something big buyers always say. A year or two in, things start to change. And keeping a social mission is fine as long as you don't poke the bear, as long as you don't make the big parent company too angry. The surprising thing, at least to me, is that there hasn't been a big dispute until now. Today, I'm going to show you how to use the English phrase take exception to. This is one of those phrases that doesn't mean what you think it means. It doesn't really have anything to do with the word exception the way we normally use it. To take exception to something is to object to it, to disagree with it strongly. You can take exception to a statement or a description. You can also take exception to an action, something that has happened. So let's start with statements and descriptions. If you say, I take exception to that statement, that means I strongly disagree with that statement. So imagine that someone says, as they sometimes do, that all big American cities are too dangerous to live in. I would take exception to that statement. I would strongly disagree with that statement. You can refer to lesson 499 and lesson 500 to hear why. In today's main lesson, we were talking about Ben and Jerry's. The ice cream maker decided to stop selling its products in the Palestinian territories, saying that it didn't want to be part of an illegal occupation. The government of Israel took exception to that statement. The government of Israel strongly disagreed with that statement. The foreign minister, one of the most powerful government officials in Israel, objected. Now let's talk about taking exception to a thing or an action. I'm watching a political drama called Borgen. It's from Denmark. In one episode, a political party discovered that its offices were being monitored by the country's spies. The head of the party took exception to being spied on. The head of the party strongly objected to being spied on. In another episode, the finance minister was fired. The finance minister took exception to the prime minister's decision to fire him. He disagreed with the decision. Here's something funny from the news. Microsoft, a company worth $2.03 trillion as of the date I researched this lesson, Microsoft is suing a British mom who has a small educational business. Her business is called Word Window, and it helps young kids learn to read. Microsoft takes exception to the name of her business. Microsoft thinks Word Window is too closely related to Microsoft Word and Microsoft Windows software. Now, I think a lot of small entrepreneurs would take exception to Microsoft's decision to sue this woman with a small business. After all, it's not like the words Word and window are really specific words, right? Here's another funny thing from the news. Do you know Tim Hortons, the Canadian donut and coffee chain? Apparently, the Tim Hortons mobile app for a year was tracking users' locations without their permission. Customers took exception to this unauthorized use of their data. The customers objected strongly to this. So they filed a class action lawsuit against Tim Hortons. The case went to court, and the court approved a settlement. So as compensation for using private location data for over a year, Tim Hortons will give all affected users a free coffee and a free donut. It's Monday, so it's time for a quote of the week. We didn't have one last week, so I've got a few saved up. We did a few lessons in August about the James Webb Telescope, and I saw a funny quote about whether there's life on other planets. Arthur C. Clarke was a science fiction writer. You might know his work from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Anyway, he said, "I'm sure the universe is full of intelligent life. It's just been too intelligent to come here." And that's all for today. Congratulations on making it to the end of another Plain English lesson. This one was lesson number 502. So remember, you can find all the lesson resources at plainenglish.com/502. We'll be back on Thursday with a new lesson. See you then.